June 20th, 1943, 15:47 hours, 5,000 feet above the silver chop of the English Channel. Oberleutnant Franz Stigler's Messerschmitt Bf 109G6 is bleeding glycol and smoke in the headset. His wingman is already a frantic crackle of lost signal. Shell splinters rattle off his canopy like hail on a greenhouse roof. You can almost taste the burning oil in the back of your throat as the cockpit floods with fumes. Every instrument needle is shaking. The throttle is dead weight in his palm, a useless lever on a doomed machine. Stigler banks left hard. The right wingtip dips, bites a gust, snaps off a foot of stressed aluminum with a shriek. Enemy tracers climb toward him from somewhere below. Angry orange chainsaws that carve the sky into slivers. He feels each stitch of heat in his ribs. The Merlin engine Spitfire on his tail looms closer, filling the mirror, gun ports flashing. The engine coughs once, twice, then seizes, silence, dead glide. The propeller freezes mid-arc like a forgotten clock. Gravity yanks him downward. He doesn't swear. He doesn't pray. He simply flips the canopy latch, pushes against the hurricane. Wind, and lets go. A single heartbeat of weightlessness, then the violent tug of his parachute wrenching his shoulders. The Messerschmitt tumbles past, spinning, screaming. A falling star that disintegrates in the spray of parts against the channel. Stigler hangs beneath silk, rocking in cool salt air. Below, green fields of Kent unroll like a quiet quilt, sunlight stippled across hedgerows. The war is momentarily far away. Muffled behind the whisper of canvas dot at 300 feet, he spots the glint of shotguns, home guard volunteers sprinting through barley, tin hats bobbing. He lands awkwardly, knees buckling. A revolver snaps to his temple before he can unclip the harness. Hands up, Jerry. The ground smells of crushed wheat and cordite. They bind his wrists, march him past curious cows, and shove him into the back of a Bedford truck that rattles toward Ralph Manston. Dust clouds swirl through slits in the canvas. Somewhere a church bell rings for a clock. The war keeps ordinary time. Inside the perimeter wire, the bass thrums like a giant wounded engine. Mechanics roll oil drums. Crane operators hoist engines from wounded hurricanes. And over it all hangs the thick metallic scent of aviation fuel. Stigler, still in sweat-soaked flight suit, is hustled toward a low-brick intelligence building. But before the door closes, a sudden roar cuts across the airfield. Heads turn. A lone Boeing B-17F call letters he can't yet read breaks through low cloud. Left wing drooping like a torn banner. You feel the collective inhale of every man on the tarmac. The fortress shouldn't be airborne. It looks like a corpse kept upright by momentum and faith. The outer third of its starboard wing is missing, severed clean past the aileron spar. One engine is feathered and dead. Another coughing black smoke. The plexiglass nose cone is spiderweb with holes. The bombardier's cheek guns hang limp. Barrels warped as it descends. Stigler sees daylight through the fuselage, literal daylight, where there should be aluminum ribs and skin. The bomber kisses runway with a bone-jarring screech of rubber. Fishtails somehow straightens. Sparks flare from a locked wheel. Its tail gunner's position is simply gone, nothing but jagged ribs and fluttering cables. Yet the fortress stays whole, rolling to a shuddering stop. Exhaust steam billows round it like breath from andiron. Draggant ground crews sprint, ladders clanging, extinguishers hissing. Men clamber onto wings, patting rivets, touching it the way you'd touch a miracle to be sure it's real. Stigler cannot move. Those fuselage holes are as wide as dinner plates do 100+ strikes. He estimates automatically. He's put 5 B-17s down himself and knows what that takes. Perfect deflection, disciplined bursts, a full belt of cannon shells. And still they sometimes limped home. But this half a wing missing? Impossible. His captor nudges him forward. Inside the interrogation room, the RAF captain begins a polite litany of questions about unit disposition, fuel reserves, morale. Stigler's eyes keep drifting to the window, to the battered bomber swarmed by mechanics like ants, already patching metal. Do you think Germany can still win, Oberleutnant? The captain asks at last. Stigler hardly hears. He imagines what that fortress endured flak over the roar, fighters over the North Sea, the long limp across enemy coastlines. He feels a chill colder than the Channel wind. Slowly, almost involuntarily, he shakes his head. The Americans, he thinks, don't build bombers. They build something else. The captain leans in. Pen poised. Well, your answer, Stigler's voice is little more than a rasp. You cannot kill those planes. The room falls silent. Outside, rivet guns hammer, and a flying tank is already being readied for the next dawn. The interrogation room empties as dust bleeds violet through the grimy panes. Stigler is left under guard, wrist cuffed, but the captain allows the window to stay cracked open for fresh air. Through that slit comes the clang of hammers on sheet metal, the metallic chorus of 100 wrenches, and the pulsing growl of a generator cart fueling floodlights. Ralph Manson has transformed into a makeshift theater, stage lit by arc lamps that paint everything in hard whites and midnight shadows. Stigler leans forward on his folding chair, cheek against the cool sill. 90 yards away, the crippled B-17 squats on jacks, its starboard wing already stripped of ragged spars. Men in oil-black cover all's work from scaffolding, riveting new ribs into place like thoracic surgeons rebuilding a lung. Each popgun whack of the rivet gun makes your own. Ribs flinch. The bomber's name, Miss Caroline, is stenciled in faded red under scorch marks. A pin-up girl's smile is half scorched away by cannon fire. Yet here she is, getting her lipstick reapplied with fresh paint. A jeep rolls up. Out steps a balding engineering officer carrying a clipboard fat with forms. 12 R's, boys, he shouts above the din. She flies at 0600. A round of disbelieving laughter ripples through the gathered ground crew, half gallows humor, half genuine pride. They answer with a chorus of sly wagers. Fiver says she makes London before breakfast. Make it 10. Mate, she'll be over the channel before Jerry finishes his tea. You can't help but be pulled in by their reckless faith. Stigler closes his eyes, but the noise summons memory. February 14, 1943. Deep over Bremen, Stigler's Bf-109 falls in behind a fortress named Thunder Mug. He remembers the sight picture green-barreled ring sight centered on the bomber's exhaust stack. Then the recoil kick of his 20mm MG. 151. Tracers march across the tail, raking aluminum, snapping the dorsal fin clean away. The tail gun goes silent. At 200 meters, he can read the terrified eyes of the waist gunners, can see smoke spiraling from ruptured Pratt and Whitney engines. He stays on her 6 for a full 60 seconds, pumping rounds until both cannons click empty. Any Heinkel would have folded like tin. Thunder Mug merely wallows, bleeding altitude. But she does not disintegrate. She keeps going. Stigler had to break off his own ammo bins empty. Fuel light blinking. Later intel claimed the B-17 ditched near Texel and the crew survived tonight. Staring at Miss Caroline, he wonders whether that crew now sits somewhere in a warm pub telling stories about a stubborn Luftwaffe ace they outflew. A soft knock, and Ralph Sargent slides a dented tin mug across the table, weak tea swirling with sugar lumps. Bit nippy out, the sergeant mutters, then hesitates. You shot M down before, yeah? He jerks his chin toward the airframe. Curious, not accusatory, Stigler studies the mug's steam curling like phantom gun smoke. 5. He answers in accented English, but never easy. He pauses, choosing words carefully. Amerikaner. They build flying armor, not airplanes. The sergeant exhales a thin whistle. Funny thing, that my cousin's an engine fitter at Boeing's plant in Seattle. Says each spar inside a fortress is twice the thickness spec'd by the ministry. Overbuilt by design, nearly bankrupted the line. He smiles at the absurdity. Cost a fortune, but it's paying dividends now. In it, outside. A crane arm swings a replacement tail section into place. The entire assembly glints under. Floodlights, brand new aluminum shimmering like fish scales against the battle-scarred fuselage. Stigler notes the serial number chalked in, fresh out of depot. Flown here in a cargo Dakota probably less than an hour ago. Logistics on rails, German industry. He knows, shutters under Allied bombing raids, spare parts are luxuries. Here, they grow on trees. The guard returns to cuff Stigler's wrists together for the march to temporary billets. They cross the tarmac mere yards from the bomber. Up close, the damage looks biblical, ribs bent like broken umbrellas. Control cables ripped and race spliced. A jagged flak hole wide enough to crawl through. Yet mechanics already run their hands along seams, feeling for flushness, nodding when the metal sits true. One pipes up, cockney cheer in his voice. Feels like patching the hide of a rhinoceros, don't it? Another shouts back, rhinoceros, more like King George's own bank vault. Stigler lifts his bound hands, almost reflexively, wanting to touch the rough stitching of combat tape over bullet holes. But a shove hustles him past. They lodge him in a sparse Nissen hut. One bare bulb, one wire spring cot. Night settles and layers the creak of corrugated iron, the distant throb of a taxiing mosquito, the ever-present hum of generators feeding the fortress's wounded heart. He lies awake, staring at the curved ceiling, counting rivet pops like slow rain. Each clang is a nail sealing Germany's coffin. He thinks. Somewhere after midnight the rivet guns stop. Silence thick enough to taste. Then, faintly, a sound that makes every hair raise, the cough whine of radial starters. One engine, two. Then all three surviving Pratt and Whitneys rumble to life. They idle low, as if letting the bomb remember its purpose. The note is uneven, but determined like a boxer on one knee forcing himself upright. Stigler swings his legs off the cot, boots thudding the wood floor. He presses his face to the tiny window slit just in time to see Miss Caroline bathed in moonlight. Props spinning slow, gleaming. A crew chief walks the wing with a flashlight, checking rivet heads by feel. On the tarmac, the engineering officer glances at his watch and nods. They're going to fly her. Tonight. Not dawn-now.y rush. What mission is worth gambling a plane held together by fresh welds and borrowed faith? Footsteps pound the hut's gravel path. The door swings wide. Two military policemen step in, shadows long under their torches. On your feet, Oberleutnant. One orders. Intelligence wants another chat. Stigler rises, heart hammering. The MP traps his elbow in a firm grip, steering him out into the lunar glare of Klieg lights. Ahead, Miss Caroline revs higher, tail lifting, wheels itching forward. A chill crawls his spine. What secret cargo or message does she carry that forces this midnight resurrection? The answer, he suspects, will rewrite tomorrow's sky. Moonlight paints Miss Caroline the color of frost, every fresh rivet a diamond glint, every dent a bruise that refuses to fade. Her engines climb from idle to a throaty roar. The prop tips tracing silver halos against the dark. Gravel stings. Stigler's boots as the MPs hurry him across the perimeter road. Beyond the fortress, Aldous lamps wink at the blacked-out control tower. Green flashes answer. Clearance granted. Inside intelligence. Stale cigarette smoke hangs like battlefield haze. A young flight lieutenant with ink-smudged fingers slides maps across a trestle table. You commanded for JG-27, correct. Good. Show us your preferred vector for slashing attacks on a box formation. He taps a pencil where red arrows converge on stick-figure bombers. The clipboard trembles either from nerves or from the low-frequency thrum vibrating every wall. Stigler barely hears. Through the uncurtained window, he watches ground crew yank. The chocks, Miss Caroline lurches, taxis, scarred wing dipping as if testing the new graft. Her wheels roll past an honor guard of mechanics who raise greasy caps and salute. The flight lieutenant repeats the question, sharper now. Your tactics, Oberleutnant. Altitude. Closure rate. Stigler's mouth tastes of copper. He's not thinking about closure rates. He's timing revolutions per minute by ear. Those engines sound healthy to healthy for a plane held together by 12 hours of frantic metalwork. What game is this? He points to the map almost blindly, outlining a feint from out of sun followed by vertical zoom climb. The lieutenant scribbles, satisfied, and flips to a fresh sheet. Next topic, fuel quality. Reports say you're cutting synthetic additives with benzol. Confirmed across the airfield. Miss Caroline noses onto the main runway. Tower lights snap from red to steady white. For a heartbeat she sits motionless. Engines straining against brakes, tail juddering like a predator straining at a chain. Then release. She rolls, gathering speed. Port wheels sparking where brake drum scrapes repaired metal. The patched wing dips dangerously. Taxi lamps flicker over shredded paint. Stigler holds his breath. At 90 knots, she's still earthbound, fuselage groaning. 120, 130. Finally, the main wheels lift, trailing dust. She claws upward, wobbling. Gear stalling halfway before hydraulic pressure bites. Props bite moonlit air. The plane staggers, rights itself, and vanishes into cloud. A collective exhale sweeps through intelligence, half relief, half awe. Even the flight lieutenant turns to watch the impossible silhouette merge with the stars. He murmurs, "Bloody miracle," before snapping back to duty posture. Right synthetic benzol. Is it true? Stigler meets his gaze. True or not, it won't matter, he says quietly. Your factories build faster than our fuel plants can supply. The words feel traitorous. Yet he cannot swallow them. Outside, somewhere over the channel, that battered fortress is proving him right. The lieutenant's pencil stalls, meaning? Stigler gestures at the blackout blinds. That can't quite muffle the distant drone of outbound engines, other bombers, other missions. Meaning by the time my pilots see your flying fortresses, there will be so many that tactics become mathematics. We are a finite number. Your production line is infinity on rails. An older wing commander steps from the shadows, face lined by too many night raids. He studies Stigler as though praising a captured codebook. Why do you sound almost admiring, Oberleutnant? Stigler considers. He recalls the first fortress he ever attacked. The .50 caliber tracers laced around his cowling. The startled respect he felt when the bomber refused to die. Respect turned to fatalism. Fatalism now edges toward certainty. Luftwaffe victories are tactical sparks in a strategic night. He speaks low. Because I have fought them up close. Herr Commodore, and because tonight you have shown me one more is never really lost. A runner burst in. Cheeks flushed. Message from tower. Sir. Fortress Miss Caroline crossing Dover coast at 6,000 performance normal. The room pauses. Digesting. Normal. As if the day's surgery never happened. Stigler closes his eyes. He pictures the crew bombardier swaddled in borrowed flight jacket. Co-pilot coaxing shuddering throttles. Waist gunners staring into night with the twitch of men who've already lived their funeral. Once, what could force them back into the sky so soon? Then it snaps into place, counterforce calibration. Photo recon run over the very flak batteries that maimed her. Who better to map lethal zones than a crew that survived them? He almost smiles at the brutal logic. Thunder builds overhead layers of sound. Not one plane but many. The wing commander strides to the door, pulls it wide. Engines loom out of darkness. An entire squadron of fresh B-17s rolling for takeoff. Wingtips ablaze with recognition lamps. They line the perimeter like colossal ghosts, each one a promise of tomorrow's daylight raid. Stigler steps onto the threshold, chained but unshackled in mind. His breath fogs in the night. Beyond the runway, a hedgerow trembles from prop wash. Leaves fluttering like pages of a book he can suddenly read, every chapter a sortie. Every sentence a fortress coming home on nothing but resolve. The wing commander addresses him without turning. We plan to send 36 tomorrow. After what we witnessed tonight, HQ upped it to 54. He glances sideways. Sleep tight, Oberleutnant. Dawn will be loud. Stigler watches the next fortress hurl itself into the black, engines blazing like twin suns. He feels the shift history tilting. Beneath his feet, what does a fighter ace do when the sky itself decides to be invincible? The 22nd of June 1943. For 58 hours, first light seeps over the Kentish Downs. A pale slash that turns dew to slivers of glass. In the makeshift POW compound behind Raf Manston's hangars, Franz Stigler stands beside the wire, collar up against Dawn's damp bite. Beyond the perimeter, flood lamps snap off one by one, conceding the sky to sunrise and to the bombers. They appear as silhouettes first, hulking cruciforms taxiing from dispersal like prehistoric beasts. Leaving a cave, propellers whirl gauzy circles, kicking rooster tails of dust. 54 of them, a tidal surge of dull green giants with shark-toothed noses and pin-up smiles. Ground crews jog backward, palms aloft and last-second check shocks pulled. Bomb bay doors dogged shut, fuel caps hammered down. Somewhere a crew. Chief slaps the aluminum flank of Princess Pat, and the hollow gong echoes across wet grass. Stigler smells octane on the breeze. His palms flex unconsciously, remembering the textured grip of a Messerschmitt's throttle the Luftwaffe once owned. Dawn. Now he watches it least to the enemy. The runway marshal raises his awless lamp steady green. The first fortress, hard luck lady, rolls, engines thundering in perfect quartet. She gathers speed. Tail lifting, wheels skimming coarse tarmac, at rotation. She seems to hesitate as if weighing all the holes she will collect today then. Hauls herself into rose-colored air. Her wake buffets the fence. Rattling barbs like chattering teeth dot another follows, then another, a relentless metronome. Exhaust smoke drapes the field, sweet and bitter. Guards abandon small talk to watch. Even the cook ladling thin porridge in the mess doorway pauses, spoon midair. 54 departures will take 18 minutes. 18 minutes in which hope and fear trade punches inside every man who can see the sky. Stigler tracks each aircraft with a fighter pilot's instinctive measure. Climb rate good. Prop wash clean. Formation discipline tight. But one bird draws. His eye fourth in line. Limb stitch Miss Caroline. Fresh aluminum patches gleam like surgical staples along her flank. She shoulders forward, engine snarling a fraction off cinch, nothing dangerous. Merely the rasp of scar tissue. As she charges, Stigler whispers to no one, hair, higher. She lifts, stumbles a heartbeat, then levels ascending into her squadron slot like a veteran with new medals. The sight injects equal parts awe and dread. If Miss Caroline can fly again, what can't? The column banks southwest toward the channel, sunlight catching prop tips and strobing halos. In their wake, the airfield seems suddenly small, mortal. A bell rings for chapel service. Nobody will attend. The roar has deafened prayer. Guards herd prisoners indoors for count. But Stigler is summoned instead to a brick admin block that still smells of wet plaster. Inside, and RAF intelligence major waits with a kettle to cups. And the day's times folded to the crossword. Humor me, Oberleutnant, he says, gesturing to a wall map speckled with colored pens. Where would you vector a staffel if you had to intersect that strike group before they hit Paris rail yards? A week ago, Stigler would have sprung to the map like a hunting dog. Today he stands motionless, hearing a memory, the scream of wind through his shattered cockpit, a Spitfire's, guns chewing his tail. He could calculate headings, but to what purpose? Gasoline will run thin, pilots will run thinner. He steps forward anyway, habit tracing a fingertip from the English coast to the Seine loop. UMass at 23,000 feet over Beauvais, dive on. The middle box, but the word hangs, but he meets the major's eyes. It buys you minutes. Not victory. The major nods, as if confirming his own suspicion, and folds the map away. Our boffins call it attrition calculus. For every fortress we lose, 2 more roll off the line. For every pilot you lose. He leaves the sentence unfinished, outside, distant yet distinct. The muffled thud of flak rumbles across the channel. Stigler's gut tenses. Sound travels faster than telegrams, and he imagines black bursts blooming round green bellies. The major hears it too. They stand in shared silence, adversaries equally captive to physics. Minutes later, the base wireless crackles first contact reports. Call signs stream in. Hard luck lady taking minor damage. Red assassin engine 3 feathered. Miss Caroline still on course. Formation intact. The room exhales. Stigler's shoulders sag with surprising relief. Why? Because on some cellular level, he thinks, we root for endurance. He recalls the frail shudder of his parachute. The giddiness of being alive while his fighter burn. Survival is universal currency. Tea's gone cold, the major mutters, setting cups aside. He extends a hand not for a shake, but his invitation. Walk with me. They step onto the veranda facing the wide Kent sky. Vapor trails braid high above. White scars on blue. Some curved back West fighters returning early, fuel spent, others dive, smoke-tailed, toward the unseen battlefront. The air vibrates with near and far engines. As if the sky itself is a titanic drum, the major breaks the quiet. When this is over, Herr Stigler, men like you and me will need to remember mornings like this. To explain them, he gestures at the contrails. How metal and math outgrew courage. How wars changed shape. Stigler studies his own empty palms. Once they gripped a control stick. Thumb over cannon trigger. Now they hold nothing, and perhaps in that emptiness lies the first sliver of peace, he murmurs. We will tell our children the sky was full, and that the world was decided there. A siren whoops alert for unbound wounded. Giraffe ambulances roar past, chasing a circling mosquito pathfinder that radios stretcher codes. The first fortress will return soon, leaking fuel, leaking blood. Ground crews jog to crash stations, fire tenders rev. Dawn's hope pivots to dawn's cost in the turn of a prop blade. Stigler watches men scurry. Tools glint, medics brace gurneys. The war is a carousel, launch, bleed, repair, launch again. He suddenly knows with bone certainty that Germany cannot break this wheel. Behind him, the major folds his newspaper, tucks it under one arm. Come, Oberleutnant, he says softly. There is still porridge if you're hungry. Stigler follows. But at the threshold he looks back once more. Miss Caroline is a speck now, etched against the horizon and possibly aloft, defiantly whole. And in that distant drone he hears the verdict echo, you cannot kill these planes. 10:37 hours. The channel haze is burned off, leaving a cobalt vault above Kent. A buzz of anticipation ripples across Ralph Manston's flight line. Binoculars bloom like brass flowers atop every turret, jeep, and watchtower. Franz Stigler stands among mechanics at the crash wagon bay, his power armband flapping in the prop wash of idling Spitfires. Someone shouts, bogies, 10 o'clock. And every face tilts skyward. Tiny dark crosses break the horizon. 20, 30, more fortresses. Limping home in staggered elements, wings scarred, exhaust trailing gauze. Even at 3 miles you can read the hurt in their silhouettes. One rides on 2 engines. Another lifts with flaps frozen half down. A third jettisons ammunition in a glittering waterfall to lighten the load. The air throbs with overlapping piston. Thunder, a symphony scored in horsepower and hope. The first ship over the fence is Red Assassin. Her nose art, the grinning devil, has been blasted clean away. Only a single horn remains. Dripping oil like a black tear, she bounces twice, collapses. A port gear strut skids in a geyser of sparks. Fire tenders chase, foam cannons hissing. Stigler flinches at the bloom of orange under her belly. But the crew pours out, 1 man carried, 3 walking, 1 turning back to pack carbonized aluminum as if apologizing. Another B-17 drops flares yellow. Smoke curling, signaling wounded aboard. Medics sprint, stretchers flashing white, through the fence mesh. Stigler sees a waist gunner swaddled in morphine calm. Pink parachute silk knotted round a thigh stump. The gunner grips the medic's sleeve. Did we hit the yards? He croaks. The medic just nods. That nod is oxygen. Stigler's gaze snaps upward again, searching for one particular outline. Miss Caroline is overdue by 8 minutes. Each second is a drumbeat in his ears. He mutters calculations, mission time, headwind, flak delay. Come on, Iron Girl. A klaxon blares, clear runway. Then she appears, bursting from a ragged cloud. Flying lower than doctrine, starboard wing wobbling where yesterday's graft strains. Under combat torque, half her elevator is shredded, the rightmost prop windmilling uselessly. Yet she holds course, descending with stately inevitability, as she crosses the perimeter hedge. Everyone on the ground, Briton, Canadian, Polish, German pow falls silent, as if unwilling to spook her final glide. Her wheels kiss, skip, kiss again. The wing graft groans, rivets pop like corn. For a breath it seems she will cartwheel. Instead the pilot kicks full left rudder, wrestling metal beyond limits. And the fortress straightens, rolling dead center until momentum sighs away. Engines. Cough, die, silence fills with cheers. Stigler exhales so hard his knees weaken. He realizes he's gripping the fence with white knuckles, tears leaking unbidden, half relief. Half astonishment that a thing so broken can still obey the sky, ground. Crews swarm Miss Caroline. The tail gunner's position patched at midnight is now a gaping crater again. Our IBS bent as if bitten by a giant. The crew chief counts to 118 new holes, chalking each with quick line for the record. someone hoists out a flak fragment the size of a loaf of bread that lodged against the radio room bulkhead. The radio man, face smeared with carbon, kisses the jagged steel like a relic. Across the apron a lorry backs up to Princess Pat, whose Bombay racks now cradle nothing but jagged emptiness. One 500-pounder detonated prematurely over the target. The navigator, trembling, tells whoever will listen that the blast shoved them 30 feet up like a surfboard on explosion. Surf and yet the fortress shook off the concussion and kept her course. Stigler remembers his own BF-109's thin skin, how single 20mm hit could peel it like fruit, and marvels anew at American excess, weight, armor, power, redundancy, a design philosophy forged not in thrift but in abundance. Sirens wail again, another formation on final. The parade of damage feels endless, wings scalloped, canopies crazed, engines feathered, but crew after crew walks away breathing. For every stretcher there are 10 men swapping victory jokes, letting lucky strikes with shaking hands. The attrition calculus the major spoke of plays out in real time. 5 fortresses lost outright, but 49 return, some barely flying, all repairable. Tomorrow the line will spin, the roster refill, and the wheel will turn once more. Stigler finds himself beside the intelligence major, both men wordless before the spectacle. The major finally says they'll fly again in 48 hours. He gestures to Miss Caroline, already ringed by welders. Maybe 72 for her. Stigler answers without turning, voice low. And we will still only have the pilots we have. The admission tastes like iron. A bugle call crackles over the tannoy power roll call. To guards approach. As they lead him away, a dispatch rider skids to the ops hut, waving coded orders. Rumor sparks like static. Tonight a prisoner transport. Train heads north, Canadian camps reputedly less crowded, farther from Luftwaffe escape attempts. Stigler's name might be on the manifest. He quickens his step, straining for one last glimpse of the fortresses dot behind him. Rivet guns bark anew. Literal heartbeat of an industrial giant. Ahead lies months of captivity, snowbound force, long nights to replay the morning's lesson. That steel, given will and numbers, can outlast courage alone. But another thought needles him. If these planes cannot be killed, what are the men inside them? The answer may decide not just the war but the kind of peace that follows. The 22nd of June 1943, 18:15 hours. A slate-gray dust settles as the POW column files toward a waiting goods train at Minster Siding. Boxcars reek of cattle and creosote. Red Cross parcels rattle in a brakeman's net like unanswered prayers. Franz Stigler climbs the wooden steps, irons chafing his ankles, and claims a corner beneath a cracked roof vent. Outside, a shunter's lantern swings one green arc. One sharp whistle, then the convoy lurches north, wheels clacking a dirge that will tattoo itself into memory. Through the slats he watches Wrath Manston dwindle to a smear of sodium lamps. Somewhere on that field, sparks frisbee from welders' rods, stitching Miss Caroline back together even as the world tilts toward night. The knowledge is absurdly comforting. If she can survive twice in 24 hours, perhaps he can survive this journey into the unknown. A Canadian corporal across the car offers a battered deck of cards. Euchre, Stigler declines with a tired smile. Language gaps aside, his thoughts are too loud for games. He feels every sway of the carriage as a reminder of lost control of days. When he decided altitude, vector, fate, now he is cargo in a wooden box. Midway through Kent the train halts for a signal. Steam billows past the vent, carrying a distant heartbeat of engines up the line. He sees them, 3 fortresses faring home on night lights. Red nav lamps winking like slow pulses. They are heading for repair depots in Yorkshire, following him, in a sense. But free in the lanes above, the dichotomy stings and inspires all at once. He wonders if the crews glimpse the prison train and think of caged birds below. The journey stretches into Scotland. By Carlisle the whisper spreads. Bomber Command reports confirm heavy damage. To Paris rail yards, mission successful. Miss Caroline delivered photographic proof before losing her number 4 engine over Dieppe. She will need new spars, yet airframe engineers say she'll fly again within a week. Stigler imagines her patched fuselage acquiring the texture of a medieval shield dent upon dent, each one a scar that testifies rather than weakens. Weeks blur into months at Camp 21, a converted castle ringed by firs and floodlights. Routine crystallizes roll call, soup line, YMCA lectures. But news filters in, Schweinfurt-Regensburg raids, exploding bomber losses yet unbroken momentum. The grinding attrition he predicted. Fellow Luftwaffe captives pore over smuggled times. Clippings, pointing to casualty columns that read like ledger entries in a bankrupt ledger of men. Stigler listens, silent, feeling the math tighten like a noose. Christmas 1943. A British chaplain strings tinsel round the mess. Overwatered stout. In Raf Garpas's Stigler, a folded leaflet from Boeing's Seattle Works. The Flying Fortress. 25. 0 parts, 1 purpose. Cross-section diagrams reveal self-sealing tanks. Redundant control paths, armor plate around every vital seat. Stigler traces the lines with a fingertip, recalling German engineers who begged for extra alloys they never received. He hands the sheet back with a quiet verdict. They build their victory. Before the first shot, spring 1944 brings distant, thunder liberating forces pounding Calais, whispers of an invasion armada massing in the Solent. Guards' radios leak Glenn Miller. The camp grapevine explodes. One May night, a Lancaster on a training sortie flounders near the perimeter. Flames lick its starboard wing. The pilot crash lands in a pasture beyond the wire. Alarm klaxons howl. Against orders, Stigler bolts from his hut, vaults a drain trench, and sprints alongside medics to the wreck. Even in captivity, the instincts of a rescue flyer burn hot. They drag the rear gunner clear seconds before the ammunition cooks off. An MP levels a Sten at Stigler, back behind the line, Fritz, but the gunner, bloodied and trembling, vouches for him. In that chaos of firelight and cordite, Stigler recognizes a profound symmetry. Metal may be enemy or ally, yet flesh is always fragile. The lesson loops back to the B17s armored giants, whose true miracle lies in protecting soft hearts inside. June 1945. The gates finally swing open under white flags. In new orders stamped release power Operation Dustbin, Stigler rides a troop truck past heathered hills toward a repatriation port along the roadside. Scrapyards sprawl with husks of war, Spitfire wings stacked like fallen leaves. Typhoon fuselages freckled with rust. But in a fence compound at Glasgow docks, he spots 6 surplus fortresses. Oil-black numbers struck through by yellow grease paint. They wait for the cutting torch. Still massive even in stillness. He feels an urge to salute. A British officer notices, "Fancy those tin cans, eh? Americans leave em behind faster than we can melt em." Stigler shakes his head. "They were never tin," he murmurs. "They were immunity." He steps aboard a Liberty ship bound for Bremerhaven, the Scottish drizzle giving way to North Sea. Brine as the coast recedes. The yard cranes dip like curtaining wings over the silent B-17's warriors laid down, purpose spent. For a fleeting moment he imagines their ghostly props turning, lifting them one last time into cloud. The war is over. Yet in boardrooms from Seattle to Stuttgart, engineers will study what kept those fortresses flying. Overlapping armor, redundant systems, the audacity to overbuild in a world obsessed with economy. Stigler, carrying no drawings or data, bears the lesson anyway and dreams of bullet-chewed wings that stayed aloft, and of a singular revelation uttered in a smoky room 2 summers earlier. "You cannot kill these planes." That sentence trails him into civilian life, into a post-war career ferrying bush cargo across the Canadian Rockies, where ice rhymes as C-46's cowlings and scenery echoes channel skies. Each time turbulence rattles rivets, he thinks of Miss Caroline and relaxes his grip. If a fortress could fly missing half a wing, surely this old Curtiss will manage a mountain pass. Decades later, in 1990, he will meet Charlie Brown, the very B-17 pilot he once spared over Bremen. And together they will tour airshows beside restored flying fortresses gleaming in peacetime polish. Crowds will ask whether the tales are exaggerated. Stigler will rest a weathered hand on sun-warm aluminum and answer with a soft German lilt, "I tried to kill them." Believe me, Gentlemen, this medal would not allow it in the crowd. Here in conviction rather than boast, we'll look again at the rivets. The thickness of ribs, the careful arrogance of design. They will understand that sometimes victory begins at the drafting table. Years before the first dogfight, in the decision to value life so highly that you armor it like treasure. Franz Stigler will pass away in 2008, age 92, ashes scattered. Over British Columbia's C2 sky corridor and airspace, he always said, reminded him of Kent at sunrise. On clear mornings, hikers report the distant drone of piston engines echoing between peaks. They call it an auditory illusion. Perhaps it is the memory of aircraft that refuse to die, looping forever in the blue.